What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to the SkillCapped tier list for patch 11.9. Brighter days are ahead as Hecarim is finally receiving a sizable nerf. We've recovered intel of a rioter struggling to climb with one of the most broken supports in Lulu, so she will actually be buffed this patch. To break it all down and set you guys up with what the meta will be looking like, we've gathered our challenger players along with analyzing the most recent stats to ensure you have the most accurate tier list possible. With Chem Tank being nerfed in 11.9, which item do you guys think is the most broken in the entire game? This may come as a bit of a surprise to some of you, but our analysts believe it to be Shirelia's after its buffs from last patch. The added move speed the item provides is just super crazy now and makes enchanters like Lulu even stronger. That's why we're kind of confused as to why Lulu is being buffed, because once people swap over from Moonstone to Shirelia's, her win rate will skyrocket. Nevertheless, let us know what your pick would be for the most broken item down in the comments below. While you're down there, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of our future uploads, and with that all said, let's run it. Starting off by breaking down the item changes, we have a nerf to Turbo Chem Tank. Active move speed is being reduced from 60 down to 40%. An item often bought in combination with Chem Tank is Deadman's Plate, and it will also receive a nerf going from 400 down to 300 health. Both these changes combined will see a slice in power level to champs like Hecarim, Udyr, Volibear, and Skarner. Will it kill them though? Most likely not. The changes will just bring those champs on a more even playing field with the rest of the jungle picks. Support item changes from 11.8 have left Moonstone underpowered, so Riot will be buffing it slightly. The Starlit Grace base heal is being increased from 60 up to 70. This likely won't be enough to push Moonstone towards the same power level as Shirelia's. If you're an enchanter support in 11.9 using Shirelia's, it will still be the way to go. Death's Dance will be buffed as the attack damage is increased from 50 up to 55, while the armor gets a boost from 40 to 45. Few champions incorporate Death's Dance into their core build as of 11.8. However, with these buffs, our analysts could see the item being purchased more as a third item on picks like Riven, Wukong, Camille, and Jax. When against very heavy AD enemy comps, opting for Death's Dance over Sterix will become the more optimal play. A nice buff to Wit's End is in store as the attack damage is being increased from 30 up to 40, and the build path will be changed from a dagger to a long sword. Despite the dagger removal from the build path, completed Wit's End attack speed will remain at 40%. Jax and Aurelia will really like these item changes for 11.9 as they'll become even stronger against AP top laners. Kog'Maw and Vayne are two AD carries that we can see picking up Wits more frequently while against heavy AP comps. One more item change is a buff to Sunfire Aegis on junglers. Immolate monster damage will be increased from 100 up to 150%. Take note that Chem Tank was nerfed, so technically Sunfire receives a boost in power in two different ways for 11.9. The fact Frostfire wasn't nerfed though leads us to believe Sunfire will still remain the lesser option for this patch. By the time you purchase Sunfire, that extra damage to monsters won't matter a ton anyways. At the very most, we can see Sunfire as comparable to Chem Tank and Frostfire, but nothing more. With all the item changes covered, let's head on up to the top lane and break it all down. Shen will have his ultimate buffed as the shield value will be changed from 175 scaling to 525 to 120 scaling to 500, but will now have a 17.5% bonus health ratio. To put this into context, let's say you complete Sunfire and started Adorn's shield. Those two items provide you with 430 bonus health, which will equate to 75.25 shielding. Since the base shield was dropped to 120, we add on this 75.25 and come away with a 195.25 shield from ult, which would be 20 greater than before. So overall, it's a solid buff and will just become stronger the more health you stack. Shen's been a really sleeper top lane pick for the past while now, so this buff will push him into S tier. The second top laner in line for some buffs is Set. His W damage ratio is being increased from 10 per 100 bonus AD up to 20 per 100 bonus AD. Ultimate bonus AD ratio will be buffed as well, going up from 100 to 120%. A few scaling buffs that won't have a huge impact on Set's power level, especially in the early game. As a result, we will be leaving the boss in A tier. A small nerf to Garen's early game is set to drop as his W armor and magic resist per stack will be lowered from 0.25 down to 0.2. Max resists remain unchanged, but you now need 150 minion kills instead of 120 to reach that max. This change will make Garen less oppressive early on, but our analysts don't see it as being impactful enough to force him down the tier list. Garen will remain an S tier top for 11.9. So, turns out Riot really goofed with the Rumble changes, as he turned out better in the top lane, but even more OP for mid. The nerf is targeted toward mid Rumble, but in turn will shift top Rumble down even further, as his passive overheated on-hit damage is being reduced from 10 scaling to 50 down to 5 scaling to 40. This change puts a dent in Rumble's ability to all-in early on, and considering he's barely holding an A tier positioning before this nerf, things aren't looking good. After just one patch of being a strong top laner, Rumble will fall back into his mediocre state as a B tier top lane pick. I guess Riot really just hates new champions becoming meta, as Mundo will be nerfed just like Rumble after only one patch of seeing some top lane success. Mundo's armor per level is being reduced from 3.5 to 3, while his AD per level will drop from 3.5 down to 3 as well. We had just bumped Mundo into S tier for our mid-patch update tier list. However, as a result of this change, he will be shifting back down into A. Heimerdinger W damage will be nerfed for 11.9, going from 50 scaling to 170 down to 50 scaling to 150. A bit of a random out of the blue nerf, as Heimer really isn't a hotly contested pick in any role at the moment. We have had the Donger in S tier over the past while, but with this nerf we will nudge him down one tier into A. So, with those 6 different top lane changes out of the way, let's have a look at the top lane tier list. Darius, Wukong, Urgot, and Riven will remain on top of the meta once again. This is where we're confused with Riot's balance logic, as Darius and Urgot have been broken the past few months, but Rumble, Heimer, and Mundo are the 3 they choose to nerf. If you guys missed our 11.8 mid-patch tier list, then you'd be unaware of Lee Sin moving up as a legit top lane pick. Thanks to the E buff last patch, Lee is a really solid option, so if you're looking for something new to add to your champ pool, look no further. Many pros like Keen and Khan have been popping off with it in solo queue, so it's not just a random pick we're recommending. The best low elo picks for top lane include Mundo, Garen, and Urgot. Champions with high play rate and overall power level that you will want to ban are Darius, Malphite, and Urgot. And remember, if you want to improve fast and get the rank that you've always wanted, then make sure you check out our hyper improvement system over at SkillCapped.com. We have professional courses by the top players, Smurf commentaries where a challenger player walks you through how to climb out of every rank from iron to diamond, and we upload tons of new exclusive guides to our website each week. In fact, we're so confident you'll improve using our system that if you don't climb at least 5 divisions while actively using SkillCapped, you can claim a full refund, so there's no risk. What are you waiting for? Check out SkillCapped.com and get the rank you've always wanted. Link in the description below. After months of rioters twiddling their thumbs around nerfing Hecarim, they've finally decided to pull the trigger and let off a nuke. Hecarim will have his base armor reduced from 36 down to 32. Armor per level is increased from 4 up to 4.25. Q bonus damage per stack is being reduced from 5 down to 2% plus 3% bonus AD. This nerf is huge here for Hecarim's early to mid game. W healing will be changed from 30% damage from any source to now 30% plus 2.5% bonus AD damage taken from Hecarim and 15% plus 1.25% bonus AD from allies. E minimum damage will be lowered from 35 scaling to 155 down to 30 scaling to 110, and the max damage going from 70 scaling to 310 to 60 scaling to 220. The E nerf is super massive, as 90 max damage off will hurt a ton. After hitting Heck with a few small nerfs in recent patches, we definitely didn't expect Riot to bring out the blowtorch and absolutely incinerate the horse. That's exactly what's happened though, and we'll be dropping Hecarim out of OP down into A tier. Another couple buffs to Kindred are set to drop, with their Q cooldown reduced from 9 to 8 seconds and Q damage increased from 60 scaling to 140 up to 60 scaling to 160. This will be the buff to move Kindred up into an A tier slot. Kayn is next up in line for a buff. Rust Q damage is being increased from 55 up to 65% total AD. The fact Hecarim was nerfed along with other chem tank junglers means Kayn becomes so much stronger for 11.9. Really amazing buff overall, combined with the fact that many other junglers are becoming weaker, will propel Kayn up into S tier. Trundle's gank power will receive a pretty hefty buff, as the slow on E will be increased from 20 scaling to 60% up to 32 scaling to 60%. Huge buff to Trundle's early game to give him much stronger sticking power and allow him to close the gap and reach targets much easier. Our analysts don't see the change being quite enough to bump Trundle into S tier, however he'll become a very good A tier pickup. Not much of a surprise with this next one, as Morgana W damage to monsters is nerfed from 200 down to 185%. So it's just a partial revert to the buff from last patch, which will force Morgana very close to an S tier position. With chem tank junglers and especially Hecarim all becoming weaker though, this nerf won't hurt Morgana all too much. Morg will retain her spot in OP tier for 11.9. The other broken jungler as a result of the buffs from last patch was Diana, so Riot is nerfing her as well. Armor per level is being reduced from 3.6 down to 3.1. Base health regen will be lowered from 7.5 down to 6.5. Passive bonus attack speed will see a partial revert, going from 20 scaling to 40 down to 15 scaling to 40. Just like Morgana, we don't see these nerfs being enough to remove Diana from a high ranking on the tier list. Diana will remain in OP, but like always, we'll monitor how she does throughout the patch and give you guys an update if anything drastically changes during our mid-patch tier list. The Fat Man will have a bit of weight taken off his E as the damage is being reduced from 80 scaling to 240 down to 80 scaling to 220. Since the damage stays the same at rank 1 and you don't max E until 2nd, the nerf won't be very impactful. Gragas support players will feel the effects of this nerf the most as they're maxing the spell out first. Gragas will continue to lock down a spot in A tier. The OP tier for jungle is without Hecarim for the first time in months, as Morgana, Diana, Shaco, and Elise will make up the top carry picks. Notice we've moved Skarner and Udyr down from S into A tier as a result of the Chemtank and Deadman's Plate nerfs. Carry junglers are looking to make a big statement for 11.9 with picks like Xin Zhao, Fiddle, Lee Sin, and Kayn becoming indirectly stronger due to those tank item nerfs. Best low elo champs to climb out the fastest are Diana, Morgana, and Fiddlesticks. With Hecarim being removed from the must-ban list, we now have Shaco, Morgana, and Diana as the top 3 choices. Just 2 changes for mid lane this patch, and let's start by looking at the buffs to Xerath. Q base damage will be nerfed by 10 at all ranks. However, the AP ratio is being increased from 75 up to 90%. Based on this buff, Riot wants to boost mid Xerath without increasing the power level of support. W damage will be increased from 60 scaling to 180 up to 60 scaling to 200, and the AP ratio is up by 5%. We've had Xerath down in B tier for quite some time now, so these buffs will be just enough for us to move him into A. With so many assassin and fighter mids being played in solo queue, it's just not the meta for Xerath, so we can't move him up any further. Turns out a 1-second cooldown buff on a 5-second cooldown spell was a little overboard, so Riot will be toning Vlad down for 11.9. Vlad will only receive a partial revert to the buff from last patch, as his Q cooldown at max rank will be increased from 4 up to 4.6 seconds. A 60% revert from the buff will definitely be felt, but will still position Vlad in a better spot than he was 2 patches ago, so we'll be moving him from OP down into S. The lone OP pick of the patch now for mid lane will be Galio. There's so many mid laners on similar power levels for solo queue in 11.9, which is why you see a plethora of great S and A tier champions. The best low elo picks for mid lane are Diana, Malzahar, and Annie. Vladimir, Yone, and Zed are high up on the ban priority list this patch. On to the bot lane now. We have another buff to Kog'Maw as his Q resistance reduction is being increased from 20 scaling to 28% up to 25 scaling to 33%. E mana cost is being lowered from 80 scaling to 120 down to 60 scaling to 100. Both buffs are actually pretty substantial, but may actually help out AP Kog'Maw more so than AD. AP Cogs max E first and like to spam it for poke, so 20 mana off is no joke. Cog is actually a really sleeper pick already in 11.8, and with Lulu buff this patch as well, everything is trending in his favor. As a result, we will be placing Cog in S tier as a pick you don't want to ignore. As expected, the only ADC nerf this patch will be Jinx. Rockets will now crit for 175% against splash targets instead of 200%. This nerf will put Jinx super close to a lot of the S tier ADCs in strength, but we still see her as a cut above the rest of the competition as an OP pick. Due to the small amount of changes toward ADC, expect the meta to line up nearly identical to where it was in 11.8. Jinx will remain above all else, and then just like mid lane, there are just so many great S and A tier champions who all have very equal carry power for solo queue. If you're in the lower elos and want to climb out fast, spamming Veigar, Tristana, or Sivir would be our recommendations. Samira, Jinx, and Tristana should all be very high on your ban list in 11.9. We'd love to get in contact with the rider on the balance team who's struggling to climb with Lulu and have a word with them about these buffs. Despite being an OP pick in 11.8, Lulu will have her W cooldown decreased by 1 second at all ranks and W attack speed increased by 5% at rank 1. There's not much more to say than abuse Shirelia's Lulu for 11.9 and enjoy your endless amounts of freelo. One of the more forgotten supports who's definitely deserving a buff is Taric, so his Q mana cost will be lowered by 20 at max rank. It's actually quite surprising we haven't seen more Taric with champs like Hecarim and Udyr in the meta for so long that Taric can synergize extremely well with. Nonetheless, Taric will be cruising into a very respectable A tier position for 11.9. So our complete support tier list will consist of Senna, Leona, Thresh, and Lulu in the OP tier. The only other movement this patch is placing Shen in B tier, as the buff to his ult will help him out slightly in the support role as well. Even though the Xerath changes should end up as net buffs, they won't be as positive for support since the base damage on Q was reduced. Base stats are so much more valuable on support since they don't achieve great value from ratios due to their lesser gold income. We will be leaving Xerath in B tier for 11.9. Speaking of base stats, the nerf to Gragas E damage will hurt him a substantial amount. Support Gragas players max E out first, so 20 less damage at max rank will be felt. We'll be moving Gragas down from A into B tier as a result. Brand, Leona, and Senna will be the 3 picks we highly recommend for climbing the lower elos. Bans for support this patch will be Leona, Thresh, and Lulu. And remember, if you want to improve fast and get the rank you've always wanted, then check out SkillCapped.com, link in the description below. Otherwise, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe to stay up to date with all of our future content. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and we will see you back here soon.